Welcome to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisin, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And joining us from Austin, Texas, is James Williams. Now, James kind of reached out to me, and as many of your listeners know, we've had plenty of high-performance kind of coaches on this show. James is one of those, but he's unique and special, and I want to let my listeners know a little bit about you. Good day to you, James. How you doing?
Great to be here, Greg. I appreciate it. I'm doing fantastic. Very honored to be on your show and get to add some value to your listeners.
Well, I think all my listeners probably want to know where that accent's from, even though many of them could guess.
It's not from Austin, Texas. That's always what confuses people. I'm from London, England, originally. I've been in the States since 2019, so still a newbie.
Okay. Yeah, kind of a newbie. You've been here long enough, especially if you're in Austin, Texas, to get the lay of the land. Well, let me let my listeners know a little bit about you. James is a certified high-performance coach who specializes in helping individuals achieve greater success and harmony in their lives. We all could use that. His approach combines a focus on both the internal mental shifts and practical, actionable strategies to enhance overall performance in the personal and professional arenas. And today you're going to get the benefit of listening to how James does this. Since 2015, he's worked particularly with driven female business owners alongside his wife. And what's your wife's first name again?
It's Emily. So Emily Williams.
Emily. So Emily Williams and him do work together. He's also driven ambitious entrepreneurs. So any entrepreneurs listening today, this podcast is for you. Any women listening today, the podcast is you. Together, they've developed successful training models and strategies that are tailored to the individual needs of their clients. James is known for his compassionate, precise, and highly motivational coaching style, which helps individuals to not only identify but also overcome the barriers to success. And, you know, I'll oftentimes say this, James, are you afraid of being successful, right? And I think sometimes there's this real fear of being successful, and that's why people aren't as successful.
Sure.
Can you speak with us about that? Because frequently it's like, well, if I become successful, what are people going to think about me? And so what they do is they dumb it down, because it's not a fear of basically, the fact is that fear is very real, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's the first piece. It's the identity piece, right? And one of the reasons I love working with entrepreneurs, or especially people who are becoming entrepreneurs, is that, you can want the money and the stuff and the lifestyle, but there have been people in your life that have known you or think they know you, and they've known a version of you. And deep down inside, you know that there's another version, or there's a version that is capable of more. But when we identify with a career or with a certain act, a certain set of behaviors, it really can threaten success, because to be successful, and whatever that means to you, it really means becoming who you need to be. And that's not often change, but it's definitely stripping away parts of your behaviors and environments and maybe people that up until now you've thought you've needed to own that identity. But to be successful, quote unquote, not only do you not need them, but it's actually really important that you let those things go. And that's a scary journey.
So what prepared you to become a certified high-performance coach? And tell our listeners a little bit about you. What was your journey toward doing this? Because, let's see, coaching has both a good reputation and a not so good one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people out there that are coaching people that really just don't have any, they don't have any meat underneath them, right? To really say, well, I could be a good coach because I've had this experience. Tell us a little bit about your background, your personal experiences, and what led you to this.
Well, I mean, my first career, I guess, as an adult out of university was I worked in television. For 12 years, I worked for a big corporation called Sky in the UK. And that was a great career. You know, I went to university, didn't really know what to study. The idea of coaching wasn't really a thing that I was aware of growing up. And so I aimlessly just went towards what I love, which was people, and TV was interesting to me. And even the way I got that job was interesting because I never actually applied for it. I stayed in relationships with people that inspired me. I traveled around Australia for 7 months on my own, and I kept in touch with two people, my family and this person that worked at Sky. When I came home from traveling, I asked this guy to just, you know, could I come in and just meet some people, and ultimately talked my way into an unpaid internship for 3 months, which at the end of it, they just gave me the job that I'd already started doing. 12 years later, I had this great experience, but I was spending a lot of my time trying to figure out, why am I not happy? I've got this job that's this really great job, lots of bonuses. You know, it's cool to tell people I work for this company. It's very well known, but I was really unsatisfied. And I guess really 6 years in, I identified that, you know, I just need to do something more challenging. So throughout that career, I just kept getting different promotions and pay rises, and I thought that those are things I needed to feel a greater sense of purpose and be quote unquote successful, but it just wasn't happening. And then about 10 years in, I met my wife, my then girlfriend, and my wife really was a muse in my life at that point because she came from an entrepreneurial family. And so she naturally thought differently. And I realized very quickly that I was trying to solve the problem of how do I go to my next level, not only be more successful, but feel a sense of purpose and happiness. I was trying to solve that problem within a bubble. So I was just trying to get promotions and changes within this industry or within this company. What she made me realize was that, well, if you can think it, it's possible. And maybe there's something that utilizes all your natural skills that would feel more purposeful. And maybe you've kind of already been doing it. And so then the work started. I started studying personal development a lot more. I got a coach. And I realized that one of the things that I was doing that I loved was I had a good relationship with my old university professor. And he would invite me back to the university to speak to the students about life after university and help them identify who are they going to be and you know, what do you need to think about. And I was doing that and not realizing it wasn't a paid thing. I just did it because I loved it. But then I realized there's something in this, right? Is there a career? Is there something in this that I could really find life purpose in? And then my coach at the time introduced me to Brendan Burchard, and I picked up Brendan's books. First book I read was The Charge, which really spoke to me because it was about, I've always been interested in health and fitness and mindset. And The Charge really got me interested into another level of what does it take for a human being to not only feel energy, but feel charge, which was a sense of purpose, a sense of, you know, I'm really doing what I was put here to do. Then the coaching industry started poking its head out in my life. My wife decided she wanted to get into that industry. So I started looking over her shoulder at the course that she was doing. And I realized then, do you know what? This utilizes my skills and strengths of mentorship, communication, learning, teaching what I've learned. This utilizes all of those things. So my job at that point was, okay, I need to educate myself. I need to learn what I need to learn, how to be a coach, to understand high performance. And even at the time, yes, a lot of people were like, you know, life coaching, what have you done, James, to help people with their life? At the time, I was only like 30. I'm 44 now. And I said, well, do you know what? At the moment, it's me learning, and I'll learn. And then there's a version of me that maybe is a year behind me that could do with a conversation. And that's the way I thought about it.
Yeah.
So I did my certification.
Question for you. So you evolved. I see this journey has been kind of ongoing now for probably 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Close to 20 years. So when you met your wife, because you guys have worked together, what is it like, when usually people, a female hires another female to coach, you guys actually coach together, right? And
The way it works is we, again, identified our strengths, right? Emily is a great coach, but different to me, very different. Emily's more of a leader and a born entrepreneur. Like she will run multiple businesses. She realized, where it started before I'd even certified, her clients were asking if they could have a conversation with me because they didn't understand why their husbands weren't supporting them in their entrepreneurial endeavors. So why is James supporting you, Emily? So it started with 15-minute calls with me just to ask me questions. James, what's different about you? This is before I even started coaching. We realized quickly, especially after certification, that my skill set was helping these women really own who they could be and take responsibility for their own lives and not need permission or acceptance from others, that those things came as bonuses when they showed up in their own power. And I had a skill for that.
Is that when this business of you started? So my question...
Not quite.
Okay. So you have this thing called the business of you. And you say that's usually where you start with a client, right? Mention how this program helps the clients. And this is something people can do, and it's at his website. And again, for all my listeners, it's thegrowthedge.com, The Growth Edge. We'll put a link. You can learn about the business of you. But this is kind of the pre-coaching program. And so tell me a little bit about it, how our listeners could learn more about it, get access to it, and to you, because it's not super expensive. It's something almost anybody could afford. So let's hear about the business of you.
The business of you is the reverse engineered part of my story of how I mastered the business of me, how I mastered myself so that I could always progress and I could always audit, manage, and gain momentum in that business, the business of me, because I'm ever evolving. We all are. And at no point will I be perfect. And so the business of you was a concept that really, I believe, is the foundation of any growth journey and a continuing journey. It was born from one of the sessions. So within the certified high performance research that I was certified to teach, at this point now, I've been certified through about 48 sessions worth of content through research material. One of these sessions was a really interesting session around presence, around the power of being present, not only with the world around you, but with yourself, really understanding yourself and what makes you tick. Within that was this idea of, like a business, I have roles within myself. I have the ability to observe what's going on. I have the ability to direct my own behavior, to take responsibility for my own actions. I have the ability to put up boundaries and barriers and decide what comes in and what goes out. I also have the ability to fight for what I want. I have the ability to love myself and others, and I have the ability to lead myself and others. So these became roles in the business of you, that when you understand them, you have a conversation with them, you put them all in the boardroom, and you sit them down and you say, okay, guys, are you all doing what you're here to do? Are you all in communication with each other? And if not, which one of these roles needs to step it up? And how does that spill on and affect those other roles? And when we have all that information, what we gain is a huge amount of clarity as to why my life is the way it is. Crucially, from that first role, the non-judgmental observer, which is really important, right, Greg? We could talk about just that.
Well, let's talk about something that I think most executives or entrepreneurs, whether we're male or female, are looking for. And that is in this seeking element. We all want to attain, let's face it, we all kind of look for nirvana, but we look for flow. And what I'd like to know is, from a physical, emotional, and spiritual side, how do you coach your clients to say, well, when I wake up in the morning, just like you were saying at Brenda Burchard's book, you were charged, right? So when I wake up, I'm charged. That's probably the first initial spot, is like my passion and my purpose in life and my values. Am I living it? And then how to get over the fear of actually showing up that way, because the world around you is not seeing you in that same light, because you have to show up differently. And then to be able to show up and actually stay in and maintain a state of, I'm not going to say nirvana, but at least flow. So
yeah, for sure.
Life is flowing. What do you do to help people gain this state of consciousness within their own mind and their body and their spirit to say, I can sustain this for a long time without anybody knocking me down? I think that's what a lot of people want to know.
There's a long, complicated answer, because we all have our own recipes, but here's the simple answer. It's more about what you take away and what you don't do than what you do and what you...
I would agree.
Right? Dan Sullivan would call this, 20% is easier than... So 10x is easier than 2x, right? 80% can go. And when I left that TV company, 80% of my life went. And I'm talking about people, behaviors, environments, habits. Most of what I'd chosen to incorporate into James and that business was not going to get me to the next chapter. So what you're saying is, if I had a raw piece of stone here and I wanted to carve it into Michelangelo, it's about what I chip away, not to get to what I want to keep. Versus me trying to do everything. Yeah.
Because I want,
guess what?
For me
Harmony.
to become, right?
Yeah.
For me to become that statue, for me to become that essence and being of Michelangelo, I had to chip away thousands and thousands of pounds. But it's in the chipping away of that stone that we become who we are. And what I think is so important is that I think so many people want this fast. This isn't a fast game. This isn't something where I'm going to take a laser beam on it and create the Michelangelo. It's actually going to be chipped away with a chisel and a hammer, right? And you're going to do it, and you're going to keep at it until you get to what you would consider be your perfection, who you are, right?
And as I was going to say, guess what? When you're lighter, because you're not carrying the weight around of the things that don't serve you, flow it and maintaining that experience is easy.
Easier. Well, look, there is this huge need in our world today, because we're all connected on the internet, where we have so many things that distract us. They distract our time. They distract our energy. But you talk about work-life harmony and balance, right? And for these overachievers, I remember having Marshall Goldsmith on here, and he coaches some of the highest performing people, and they don't even recognize the fact, right, that they already have 2 MBAs and a PhD, and they've started a company that's making millions and millions of dollars, and all they're looking for is more. So when do you actually stop and say, more, I don't need more. What I need.
More would suggest that there's lack.
Right. Because somewhere along the line in their childhood, we didn't say adverse childhood experiences, but the question is, what, I might ask you, do you think your clients regret?
What do my clients regret?
Well, if they're trying to be so successful and they can't just stay with who they are, do you think they potentially have something in their life that they regret?
I would hope not.
Well, because they're saying they didn't become this great, famous, whoever they wanted to become.
Well, normally my clients don't come in with regret. They come in with more, right? I want more.
Right.
But what you're saying, and I hear you, is that, if you're saying you want more, are you saying you don't have enough?
Right.
What does that mean, right? This is where, sometimes if it gets really deep, I'll actually hire a psychiatrist to co-coach with me, because it depends how deep that's come from. But all of us have a journey and have varying levels of trauma that have allowed us to put on identities that we think we need to survive. And a lot of those identities make us feel like, A, we need to be obliged to certain things, and B, that we're not enough, and that we need to be happy. And identifying that.
Would you say, James, that we live in a world of making stuff up? Then we believe what we made up. And then literally we spend our lifetime unbelieving what we made up to become who we really are.
Yeah.
And then the question is, what is the truth? So the big T is the big truth, right? The realization of that comes through the experiences of chipping away at that because I'm actually chipping away parts of myself that I don't need, right? Sure. Or that I learned from, right? And I now have that essence of what I've learned. Would you say?
Exactly.
Okay. So if I stand up for my truth, how do you help people find their truth and stand up for their truth within inside themselves?
So, the business of you, that's why that's the start, because the business of you are questions to the deepest parts of you that you may not have been introspective enough to delve into. It starts with clarity. Even Brendan's work, the first pillar is clarity. We can't move anywhere until we have conscious competency and even an understanding of where we've previously been unconsciously competent and unconsciously incompetent. Like complete awareness of what has made me who I identify as now. Where is it that I am meant to go? And what parts of me am I gratefully saying goodbye to? That's where we start. And part of that is trust. Especially in the world we live in now where people want everything quickly, communication is different. It's not as impersonal as it used to be. Trust is, and always has been, one of the most valuable things that we can spend time cultivating. But guess what? You can only really trust the world and others as much as you can trust yourself. And so trust in self. Ilyana Van Zant wrote a great book on this, Trust, The Four Essential Truths. Is one of the best books I've ever read on trust. Helping my clients trust themselves is crucial to then planning that next step, because then they will allow themselves to do what it is that they really want to do that may take some courage, is crucial. So I would say trust.
So look, when you have a client that comes to you and they're at the beginning stages of maybe the business of you, and they're confused, and they've kind of lost their true north, as people call it in this business, right? They don't have a purpose. There is no significance in their life. They're just working to make money, right? They don't have a lot of meaning. How do you put an essence around finding a client, when you find a client like this, to actually get them to dig in, and no matter what they want to call it, take this deep introspective journey with you? Because you could say, oh, well, we're going to discover your purpose. We're going to discover your values. We're going to discover your vision. We're going to discover all these things. And I get it. And they go, hey, James, really, I'm so lost that I don't even know if I want to work there. I'm sure you've had them.
I've had them in the past. So I came up with this model. Again, it's available on the website. It's a free video called The Three Rooms. It's like a visualization I made up for myself because I was really struggling to be present. and I needed a construct that would allow me to visualize what presence looked and felt like. And I'll share it with you because that explains the answer to your question. So I believe that in our mind, we have 3 rooms, right? We have the past habitual library, which is everything we've ever done, seen, felt, and experienced. On the other side, we have the future creative workshop, which is everything all the timelines we get to choose from, all the easels full of ideas of the things we get to create. Now, these 2 rooms are void of time, right? They don't exist. If we spend too much time in the past, it can be stressful and rehashing. If we spend too much time in the future, we'll be anxious because we can't do anything there. The 3rd room is the present room, the only room that actually exists. Mm-hmm. So by understanding this construct, I would take that client to the past room. I'd say, let's open up that door and let's go on a journey of discovery. What are some of the things you've done that have served you, that have made you happy, that have made you feel great? Give me an example of a story where you were really productive and effective and you felt a sense of achievement afterwards. And we'd get some of those stories out. We'd pull those things out of the library, right? And we could ask questions like, what are some of the things you've done that have felt unfulfilling and haven't served you and made you feel drained? And we pull those things out. And we don't make that room wrong. We just use it as a library. It's a great source of information. And then we take the useful information and we take it into the future room. We say, okay, where can we have more of this? And so really it starts with feelings and fulfillment and, how much they feel like that. Most of my clients now aren't that down that road. They're pretty driven and successful. But, the more lost they are, the deeper into the journey of just what makes you tick from the past that we can take seeds from and plant them in the future.
How much of your work actually deals in helping people find a level of spirituality?
Well, I mean, spirituality is a crucial part of the journey. It depends on the client's verbiage around that, right? What is it that they believe? So I've got to be respectful of understanding where they find their spirituality, right? Is it religion? Is it a more universal spirituality? What is it? But ultimately, especially for entrepreneurs, it's not all about you. You're not an island. And that if you are saying that running a business or being an entrepreneur is lonely, you're doing it wrong.
Well, I think that if you listen to Steve Jobs and all the greats who've been around and Bill Gates, they'll always talk about intuition. Mm-hmm. They'll say, my intuition was one of the best things that I followed when I was an entrepreneur. And I listened to a higher voice. And I know in Steve Jobs, a lot of people don't really realize this, but he followed Paramahansa Yogananda and meditated and went to India and then came back. And that was part of his philosophical belief, right?
Right.
Which was to do that. My question for you is I wrote a book many years ago called Hacking a Gap, A Journey from Intuition to Innovation and Beyond. And I realized that when people get in touch with this higher source, they become a lot more creative. They become a lot more innovative. They become a lot more inspired. They become a lot of things. And sometimes it's really just that connection to that intuition, that higher self that allows me a breakthrough to something new. As you were saying, the 3 rooms, I think, is awesome, the way you explained it, because many people used to say, tomorrow's a promissory note, yesterday's a canceled check. The only thing you really have right now is right now, right?
Yeah.
And we know that is the presence. And there's been so many books written by presence. Mm-hmm. But what I'm asking you is, in helping your clients develop presence and get in touch with the intuition so it emphasizes more creativity, more innovation, more joy, more abundance, less fear. What is it that you actually help them realize? Is it you're just realizing that you need to stay in the present moment, or do you help me realize something about the other 2 rooms?
Yeah. Well, we could go back to what we just said about trust. Like, trust and faith are very similar things, and that speaks to intuition, right? high performers, and this comes from a great study, high performers are typically present facing the future. And I will help them recognize that no negative emotions exist in the present room. And I challenge you to tell me of one negative emotion that ever exists in the present, because it doesn't. Any negative emotion that's in the present is either a fear or an anxiety about something that might happen, or a remembering or stress about something that did happen. So freedom and peace and connection to creativity and source is ultimate presence.
Mm-hmm.
So finding that's why I came up with the rooms, because if you can imagine shutting doors when those emotions come up, you start to gain some agency over those, because you recognize that they don't actually exist here.
And I really hear you very strongly, and I want to echo that the concept that you gave today in this podcast, just with the 3 rooms, was worth the price of admission for everybody, because the reality is that's a great way for people to look at things. Look at the past, look at the future, stay in the present, right? And you learn from the past, you seek what you can create in the future, but you stay in it and do it one step at a time, right? Knowing that it doesn't always turn out exactly as maybe you envisioned, but it does turn out because you're headed toward some goal, some meaningful something. And that's where I want to ask you this, because in all of this past, present, future, everybody is put and is given decisions to make. Lots of decisions, everyday decisions, right? How do you help your clients make, quote, better decisions, or even make a decision?
Yeah.
Because some people just vacillate. They just never make the decision. And it wastes a lot of time when you don't make the decision.
Well, you'll know this. You've interviewed some of the greats on this podcast, and they will all tell you that the reason why, say, Steve Jobs was more successful than some other guy was he failed more, which means make a decision. You do your best to use all the things we've talked about to get as much clarity towards the direction and what's required to attain a goal. But at some point, you just make a decision and you follow it through from the beginning to the end, and then you either win or you learn. And in my last 20 years, I've learned way more, 1,000,000 times more from every failure than I have from any of the successes.
I remember a long time ago, James, a gentleman by the name of Larry Wilson. It was Wilson Learning. You may not know him at all, or you might, but he had one of the biggest training companies. He used to hang out with Maslow, Maxo Mosby, Maxey, what's his name? The psychologist that did all the stuff on change. But at any rate, this guy used to play a game with it would have a timer in the middle, so get this, and it would be $1 million on the board. And there'd be all these circles on the board, right? And these groups of people would have to get to stop the clock the quickest. All right, now get this for a minute. They're trying to stop the clock as quickly as possible. The ones with fear, who were afraid they were going to basically step on the landmines, were the ones who always had less money than the ones who found out where all the landmines were and then stopped the clock, right? So the point of the exercise was basically, don't be afraid to step on the landmine. You have to, whatever that is, the problem, the issue, whatever. You got to find out where it is.
Yeah.
And then you got to move forward, because you need to stop the clock. Because if you can't stop the clock, you're going to go broke.
Yeah.
Right? And I thought it was such a good game, because it got people to wake up and say, what am I afraid of? Those are just little dots on a board. Why am I afraid that they truly had dots, right? It was like, hey.
Great metaphor, though.
So it is. And it's a way for you to be forced to make a decision to actually go step on something that maybe you thought maybe you shouldn't. But then what did you learn? you learned in the end that literally you were able to have more money on your board than the other teams you're playing against, right? So this brings me to this. If I was to do a customized breakthrough session for you, with you, what would that session feel like, look like, and be like? And what can I expect as they coming out the other side?
Great question. Well, it starts with me gathering as much about you as possible, right? So it starts with, they get sent a questionnaire, and the idea of that is I want to know as much about you as possible, not just the obvious stuff like, why did you book this session? What are you trying to achieve? What have you been struggling with? All the normal questions. But there's some questions, actually, some of them taken from the charge, around personal agency that, based on how they answer them, I learned a lot about your psychology too, because people judge themselves in very interesting ways. And it's not that it's true or not true, but it's how people think of themselves is interesting to me. So from that information, we go through those 6 roles. It's the set questions through those 6 roles, but the goal is for both of us, you and I, to gain a huge amount of clarity as to why you are experiencing the world you're experiencing right now, why you are where you are in your life. We need to know everything. But why are you here? And then how, through some of those questions, by managing those roles, can you start to progress by stripping stuff away and refocusing on some of the things that have been helping you. So by the end of it, you have a huge amount of clarity as to how you're going to progress in your life.
Well, you and your wife have been involved in group trainings, masterminds, and I just had Don Green on here from Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill was one of the first people who had taken all those people he'd interviewed, and I think it was either Rockefeller or one of them was the guy that created mastermind groups. Right. And when I first started in this business, mastermind groups were just prolific. It was every day. Well, let's do a mastermind. 3 or 4 friends are going to get together. We're going to help one another. And I think I don't see as much of it anymore. But I do believe that it is extremely valuable when you find the right people to be in a mastermind together. Versus now you see much more individual coaching. How do you use masterminds, group trainings in your approach? And what might make it a little bit different for the person coming in that would get coaching from you?
Yeah, great question. And just to say here, the word mastermind has been watered down a little bit, because I've seen a lot of masterminds. But and I'm so glad you brought up, the original creation of a mastermind, because really what it's meant to be is just that, masterminding. So a group of people that as a collection can be valuable to each other, being in the same space, a bit like networking. And so what we've really enjoyed, and even though my wife does some other stuff, we do less things together, masterminds and events we will always do together, because putting amazing people in a room together that all want to progress. So we, as their coaches or teachers, or the people we bring in to be their teachers, will be there to teach them and coach them, but ultimately they are part of the value as well. They are there to add ideas and perspectives to each other. So then it creates, you talked about flow earlier. Well, we know that Csikszentmihalyi wrote that flow state is much easier to create in a group setting than it is individually. So then when you get beautiful, powerful people together, they're all driven, they're all ambitious, all willing to be vulnerable and honest and inspiring among strangers, and you take them somewhere inspiring. We did a mastermind in Bora Bora last year. We used to live in London. That's where I'm from. So we've done them in London, New York, Santa Barbara, California, going to amazing places. That's the environment piece, right? Put people in an incredible environment with incredible people with joint ideas, but all of them want to come and learn something, but they're going to be a part of the experience, and magic happens. And that's what we really enjoy, because we end up learning as well.
It's like the wisdom 2.0 events. It's any of those kind of events. There's lots of them. So, kind of looking ahead for you and your wife, what is it that you're changing, modifying, adjusting that might be, if we looked in the room 3, which is over here, the future, for James, what is it that you're doing, and what could the clients or prospective listeners that would go to your website learn about maybe some of the new things that the Growth Edge is going to do?
Right. Well, the Growth Edge website is going to be relaunching in the next month. It's all been completely changed. The one-on-one coaching will always exist because foundationally, I really enjoy that and I love working with amazing people. And my wife's business is doing lots of other things, but we are going to do another big event coming up soon. That'll be a joint event, probably next year. Her company's called I Heart My Life, so it'll be I Heart My Life Live. That'll be the second big one. So I'm networking and bringing together amazing people is something I get a lot of joy from doing. And so more, and I don't think I'll call them masterminds, but more events that bring together people and collaborate to create something amazing is something I'm looking to do. That will be less of a client coach scenario and more a influencers all being together and collaborating type scenario. That's something that we're looking to do in the future. And you'll see that on the website when that's ready to go. We're going to be going back to Bora Bora for one of those, just bringing some incredible people together to co-create.
I think you ought to do the James Williams South by Southwest.
Yeah, of course. It's ironic here in Austin, and I didn't do much of that while I was here, but I will be coming back for that. But yeah, why not?
Yeah, why not? Why not? You ought to have thousands of people show up in downtown Austin for the South by Southwest, because it is quite an event, isn't it?
It's quite an event.
So, yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being on Inside Personal Growth. And again, for all of my listeners, we've been on with James Williams. He is the certified high performance coach. You can go to his website at thegrowthedge.com. James doesn't have a book, but that's not that important. What he does has is he have the expertise and knowledge, and he's actually been through the journey. And I always like to profile people that have taken the journey, that haven't always been on the top, that haven't always been 100% successful, but have continued with grit, determination to get there. Again, his analogy that he used this morning about the 3 rooms is probably one of the biggest takeaways you can have in staying present. And I just want to thank you for being on the show. Namaste to you. Thanks to all the listeners out there. And thank you, James, for taking the time to impart some of your wisdom around not only coaching, but just life's lessons in generals, because that's really what it's about.
Yeah, we're all learning forever. It's been a pleasure to be on such an amazing podcast, Greg. You've created something incredible. And so thank you very much. And just a reminder that I spend most of my time on LinkedIn, jamesrswilliams.com. I have a newsletter. That's the closest to my book you can read. So feel free to dive into that. And
the book is coming. I guarantee you the book is coming. He hasn't said that yet.
Greg's pushed me. He said, I've got to write a book.
It'll be there.
So I guess I'll write a book.
He'll write a book. He'll write a book. All right. Take care, James.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you for listening to this podcast on Inside Personal Growth. We appreciate your support. And for more information about new podcasts, please go to InsidePersonalGrowth.com or any of your favorite channels to listen to our podcast. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.